Let's start with a story. On June 2, 2014, a 92-year-old man named Ronald Read died in Brattleboro, Vermont. He had pumped gas and fixed cars for about 25 years, then worked as a maintenance man at a JCPenney for another 17. When his will was read, the town was stunned. He left nearly $8 million, $4.8 million to Brattleboro Memorial Hospital and $1.2 million to Brooks Memorial Library. Both were the largest gifts either had ever received. Nobody in town had any idea. Now, most people hear a story like that and think the secret is just being cheap, painfully frugal, driving an old car, patching your own clothes. But that's not really it. The real secret is that Ronald Read was playing an entirely different game than the one most of us are taught. Consider the opposite story. A widely discussed 2009 article in Sports Illustrated claimed that 78% of former NFL players are bankrupt or under financial stress within 2 years of retirement, and around 60% of former NBA players are broke within 5. Those exact numbers have been disputed and never came from a formal study, but the pattern behind them is not in question. Same country, same decades, opposite outcomes. What was the variable? It wasn't income. The janitor who died a multi-millionaire and the athletes who earned 100 times his salary and lost it all were not separated by their paychecks. They were separated by a system, a set of rules for how money actually works. Rules that build quiet wealth that lasts for generations. This isn't about willpower. It's about structure. Here are 7 of those old money secrets they don't teach you. You don't buy things, you buy incomes. This is probably the single biggest misunderstanding about wealth. It's the difference between what we can call productive assets and consumptive assets. New money, people with high incomes but not much lasting wealth, buys consumptive assets. Things that go down in value and cost money to maintain, luxury cars, designer clothes, the newest phone. They're signals of wealth. Old money buys productive assets. Things that put money back in your pocket, dividend-paying stocks, rental properties, a piece of a profitable business. This creates an invisible expense we'll call the signaling tax. It's the price you pay for looking rich, which directly gets in the way of becoming rich. Every dollar spent on a status symbol that loses value is a dollar that can't be put to work earning you more. And here is the number that makes it concrete. In Thomas Stanley and William Danko's research for The Millionaire Next Door, the typical American millionaire spent about 1% of their net worth on a vehicle. The typical car buyer spends closer to 30%. That is the entire gap in a single statistic. The most common brand among those millionaires wasn't Mercedes or BMW. Ford led with roughly 9.4% share, and the single most popular model was the F-150 pickup truck. Ronald Read was the same principle in human form. He wasn't spending his maintenance man's salary on status. He was quietly buying tiny pieces of companies, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, CVS, that paid him to own them. He was buying incomes. Protect your future self's freedom. This secret is about one choice: keeping your fixed costs low, no matter how much your income grows. Every recurring bill you sign up for, a bigger mortgage, a bigger car payment, another subscription, is a bar on a cage you're building around your future self. It's a decision you can no longer make, a risk you can't take, a bad year you can't absorb. Call it the lifestyle ceiling. As income rises, fixed expenses tend to rise right along with it. The space between your income and that ceiling, that's your freedom, and it's the only thing that actually is. Someone earning $80,000 with $75,000 in fixed costs has a world of options exactly $5,000 wide. Someone earning that same $80,000 with $40,000 in fixed costs has a world $40,000 wide. They can invest, take a sabbatical, start a business, or survive a layoff. And if you think a bigger paycheck solves this, it doesn't. Bankrate's Living Paycheck to Paycheck survey, conducted by YouGov across 2,407 American adults, found that 24% of people earning over $100,000 a year still describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck, nearly 1 in 4 six-figure earners. The income arrived. The freedom didn't, because the ceiling rose to meet it. You know that feeling? It's the 3rd week of the month. Your paycheck landed, but it was already spent before it hit your account, spoken for by the mortgage, the car payment, and a dozen subscriptions you forgot you had. You're checking your balance before ordering takeout, with that little knot in your stomach. That feeling of being choked by your own success? That is the lifestyle ceiling. The pro athletes who go broke aren't bankrupted by one bad decision. They're suffocated by 1,000 monthly payments they signed when the money was flowing. They built a life that gave their future self zero room to breathe. Track the score, not the speed. Imagine two numbers, your income and your net worth. Our society is obsessed with the first. How much do you make? What was your raise? But income is just flow. It's speed. Net worth is the substance, the reservoir. It's the actual score of the game. What matters isn't how fast the river runs, but how much water ends up in the reservoir. That obsession with salary creates the income illusion, the belief that a high salary automatically means you're wealthy. A doctor earning $300,000 with $350,000 in student loans and mortgage debt isn't wealthy, they're underwater. A teacher earning $60,000 who has invested steadily for 20 years and has $500,000 in net worth is far wealthier. Yet who do we instinctively see as the rich one? The gap shows up clearly in the data. Northwestern Mutual's 2025 Planning and Progress study found that 76% of millionaires describe themselves as disciplined financial planners, compared with just 49% of the general population. And 74% of them work with a financial advisor, versus 34% of everyone else. The difference isn't intelligence or access. It's that one group treats structured planning as the default and the other treats it as optional. Ronald Read almost certainly never earned a six-figure salary in his life. But for decades he tracked the only number that ultimately mattered, what he had accumulated. The high-earning athletes were watching the next game check. They were watching their speed instead of the score. Make debt your employee, not your master. The modern world sold us a subtle lie about debt, that the important question is, can I afford the monthly payment? That question is a misdirection. The only question old money asks is, will this debt make me richer? Will the asset I'm buying appreciate or produce cash flow greater than what the debt costs? If yes, that's leverage. If no, it's just a loan. Call the mistake the affordability trap, judging a purchase by its monthly impact on your cash flow instead of its long-term impact on your net worth. Financing a depreciating asset isn't leverage. It's a slow-motion transfer of your wealth to a lender, with a convenient payment schedule attached. And America is currently running a live experiment in exactly this. According to Edmunds, in the first quarter of 2026, 30.9% of trade-ins toward a new vehicle were underwater, the driver owed more than the car was worth. The average shortfall hit $7,183, the highest first quarter figure ever recorded. And in the second quarter, a record 23.9% of buyers signed loans of 84 months or longer, ***, 7 years of payments on an asset that starts losing value the day it's driven off the lot. That is the affordability trap at national scale. Every one of those buyers could afford the monthly payment. Ronald Read sat on the other side of that table. He owned dividend-paying stocks. He wasn't paying interest to a lender, the world's largest companies were paying him. Win by not playing the game. The finance industry wants you active. Trade, react to the news, check your portfolio daily. An entire business model rests on convincing you that wealth comes from constant activity. The old money secret is the exact opposite. The greatest returns usually go to those who do the least. That urge to do something carries a penalty we'll call the activity tax, wealth lost not to bad markets, but to your own reactions. Selling in a panic. Buying into a frenzy. Believing you're smarter than decades of market history. This has been measured precisely. In 2000, finance professors Brad Barber and Terence O'Dean published a study in the Journal of Finance with the blunt title "Trading is Hazardous to Your Wealth." They examined 66,465 household brokerage accounts from 1991 to 1996. The most active traders earned 11.4% a year. The market returned 17.9%. Same market, same period. The traders lost roughly 6.5 percentage points a year to nothing but their own activity. You see red in your portfolio. Your heart starts to pound. The impulse to sell, to stop the pain, to act now, it's overwhelming. That feeling is the enemy. Ronald Read's genius wasn't picking perfect stocks. He held over 90 companies, avoided what he didn't understand, and then did almost nothing for 60 years. Compounding's only real requirement is time you don't interrupt. Build a moat, not a fence. This rule is about the real purpose of insurance. The financial world will sell you insurance on everything: an extended warranty on a toaster, trip protection for a weekend away, a device plan for your phone. That's 1,000 tiny fences around things that don't matter. Old money builds a moat instead. They insure only against true catastrophe, a handful of events that could genuinely wipe them out.
A disabling injury that ends their income.
A major liability judgment.
A catastrophic medical event.
For everything else, they self-insure, because they can absorb it. Overinsuring against small problems creates the nuisance premium, and Consumer Reports put a number on it. Their analysis found extended warranties on large appliances cost an average of $126, while the median difference in what people actually paid to repair those same items without a plan was about $26. You're paying roughly 5 times the expected cost of the problem for the feeling of being covered.
Consumer Reports' recommendation is to decline in nearly every case. The rule is precise: if you could replace it without financial distress, self-insure. If the event would genuinely alter your financial trajectory, insure it.
Many athletes who lost everything weren't just undone by spending, their whole structure was fragile, because they were often underinsured against the one risk that could end them, a career-ending injury.
Your wealth is a secret worth keeping. In a culture of sharing everything, this may be the most counterintuitive secret. Lasting wealth is quiet. Financial privacy isn't modesty, it's strategy.
The moment people know you have money, a specific set of wealth-destroying forces switches on. Call it the social tax on wealth, the unspoken expectation that you'll pick up the check. The steady stream of great opportunities from friends and family. The pressure to upgrade the house, the car, the vacation, to match the image you've created. Performing wealth routinely costs more than the wealth itself. Ronald Read is the closing argument.
He drove a used 2007 Toyota Yaris. He parked in the spaces further out, the ones without meters.
He wore a fraying denim jacket held together with safety pins, and gathered fallen branches for his wood stove.
Breakfast was coffee and an English muffin with peanut butter. He read the Wall Street Journal every single day.
And not one person in Brattleboro knew they were living next to a millionaire.
That's not eccentricity. That's insulation.
He never had to perform, so he was free to just build. The Millionaire Next Door research found the same pattern at scale. A striking share of American millionaires live in ordinary middle-class neighborhoods, often in the same house for decades. They'd figured out that one of the most valuable financial decisions available to anyone is simply opting out of the game of looking rich.
So what's the pattern? Not one of these 7 requires a big income, a stroke of genius, or a lucky break. Every one of them is, frankly, boring.
They're structural. They build a system where wealth is the natural output instead of demanding heroic willpower to resist temptation every single day.
Buying incomes over buying status.
Low fixed costs over a high-flying lifestyle.
Net worth over salary. Debt that works for you over debt you merely afford. Stillness over activity. Moats over fences. And quiet over noise. The ultimate secret they don't teach you is that financial freedom isn't loud.
It isn't a Lamborghini or a mansion. It's a used Yaris parked where there's no meter, and $8 million nobody knew about. Not because you have to live like Ronald Read, but because his money worked silently for 60 years, which freed him up for the actual business of living.
So, which of these 7 landed hardest? Which one made you pause and think about your own life, or someone you know? Drop a comment.
Tell me which rule you'd start with.